We're going to go over your charge up for Monday. The first question was a benchmark question, number 16. In fact, all of these questions were benchmark questions. A lot of us missed. So let's take a look at these. The first question is asking you what happens when wood burns. So when wood burns, we know we have an old substance, which is the wood, turning into a new substance, which is going to be gas, and also ashes. So as it burns, it doesn't go anywhere. The old matter just turns into new matter. So A is not a good answer. It completely changes to heat energy. Well, that's not true because we know that ash is left, so there's still some chemical energy in there. It changes to other kinds of matter and energy. This is true. It changes from a solid to a gas, or a solid to another type of solid like ashes. And it does not all change to gas. Our best answer is C. For the next one, this one was probably the most tricky one on the benchmark, I think. If we had two samples of the same substance, so let's say we had 2 pieces of aluminum foil. That foil was not going to have the same shape. It's just a random piece of foil, tin foil. It's not going to have the same mass. One might be bigger than the other, and it might not have the same volume. One might take up the same space. But what they are both going to do, they're both going to have the same density. That foil ball is either going to float or sink based on how packed the material is. And if we zoomed into that tin foil, if this was our piece of tin foil, and we zoomed into any piece, we would see that our protons and neutrons inside those elements look the same at that part or at this part. So the reason that all materials have the same density is because they're made of the same protons or elements inside. Let's take a look at 2 more questions. We gotta erase these. Next one, potential energy. You should have underlined that and written stored. We know potential is stored energy, and it depends on 2 things. It depends how high something is, so the height, and it also depends on the mass or how heavy something is. In this case, we have Ashley on a bike. She starts at a hill, she goes down, and then she goes back up. So she's going to have the most potential energy at the top of the hill. Most of you guys got that one. A few of you guys put number 2, so I'm not sure about that. Number 1 is where they have the most potential energy, and then at number 2, she's already starting to move. So here, we already have some kinetic energy because it's moving. Let's look at number 25. We have forces applied to 3 different blocks, and we want to know which one will accelerate, meaning which one will speed up the most. Well, we know we need the most force, so we know it's not 1 or 3 because we need 20 newtons of force. So that's going to help us move things faster. Now, if you put 20 newtons on something that weighs 2 kilograms, the small block, or 20 newtons on the big block, 4 kilograms, which one is going to move faster? Well, the one that has less weight to move. If you move something and it doesn't weigh a lot, it's going to move a lot faster. Your answer was B for that one. We're going to move on. Feel free to pause, but you're going to flip that side over, and you are going to make a observation and an inference about the graph that I'm about to show you. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's our graph. Take 1 minute to make an observation. So how does the line go? Does it go up, down, or does it stay constant? Remember, increase, decrease, or constant. For students that got a grade above 80, what can you say about their ILEAP score? Was it above 250? Was it above 300? Was it above 350? Make an observation and then make an inference. Guess why you think people with better science grades are going to have better ILEAP scores. You have 1 minute to write that down. Feel free to pause, teachers. All right, so the fact that you wrote from the graph should be something that you notice. So for example, students who had an 80%, scored at a high basic or mastered. So that's just an observation that we saw from the graph. So how can we explain that? Well, students that worked hard in science learned what they had to pass the leap. So that could be one example. When we talk about getting ready for the leap, it's going to be very clear that if you're not working hard, it's going to be hard to pass. On the other side, most of you guys have been working really, really hard, and you should have seen that reflected in your benchmark scores. That was definitely a hard benchmark. And more importantly, you should see it in your grades. If your grade isn't where you want it to be, isn't above that 60, do what you can these next few weeks to make sure you get it there. I'm here to help you pass, but at the end of the day, you need to do your work. What we're going to do next is take quick notes. I'm going to type up the notes, and you're just going to write that down on your sheet. An observation, every single time we see that, we need to underline it. So I need you to underline it on your paper. And every time we see it and underline it, we're going to write that it is a fact you get using your 5 senses. It could also be a measurement. If it's an observation, you know it's going to include some words. It might include the word observe, sees, hears, measures, smells, all of notices. All of these are words that indicate it's an observation. Go ahead and write those down. An inference, on the other hand, is what a scientist thinks about after they see these things. After they see the observation, what are they going to guess? So that is a guess or explanation. And it uses science terms, usually. That's what scientists think is happening based on their observations. This can include the word must be, thinks, explains, causes, and any science word is probably going to be an inference. Make sure you write those down. Feel free to pause if students need more time. All right, next one. The last thing that we're going to teach you to do before you guys do your computers for today is a new strategy that we're going to use. We are going to call it TOOP. And what that means or stands for is translate your science terms, that's the T, underline the question and write 2 words, and that's before you look at the answer choices, and always, always, always do a picture or a diagram. So let's read this first one. Therese pushed the button on a flashlight, but it failed to light. She then opens the end of the flashlight and examined the batteries. What statement is an inference the student could make? My first step is T, translate. I'm going to translate inference into guess. My pen is your pen, even though it's a lot harder for me to write on the computer. That's a guess. So we translate it. I don't see any other science terms, so I can put a check. This is what you need to be doing for every single multiple choice question you see from now until the leap, so that we're in this good habit. It's not that you guys don't know this information. It's important that you're using the strategy so that you always get the stuff you know correct. Next thing you're going to do is underline the actual question. So don't underline these first few words. This is the question. Which statement is an inference the student can make? Jot down 2 words. So again, after you translate it, jot down another 2 words. So I know it's a guess. I know it probably has science terms. And what else do I know about an inference? it's not a fact. So just by starting to think about what the answers will be about before I even read it, that's going to help me in these multiple choice questions. After you're done underlining and jotting 2 words down, check that box off. Last thing we're going to do is draw a picture or a diagram. It's a little hard to do this with an inference, but we're going to just draw our brain. Well, what brain? Because we know that you need to think in order to make an inference. After you've done all these 3 steps, then you're going to read your answers. The flashlight uses D cell batteries. That's a fact, it's not A. The flashlight doesn't work. Again, fact, it's not B. The batteries have brown rust around their edges. Fact, it's not C. The batteries are dead. Well, we don't know that for sure. We just know that the flashlight doesn't work. This one was a tricky one, but your answer was D. All right, we have a few more minutes here. Last question, and then you guys will do your computers. But remember, your prove it is on observations and inferences. This next question. Amanda studies a group of rocks and records several statements about them in a notebook. Which statement is an observation? We need to underline observation and translate that science term. Observation is a fact or a measurement. After you translate it, boom, give yourself your T. Next step is the U. Underline the question and jot 2 words down. Underline and jot. Which statement is an observation? That's the question. So I know I'm going to be reading statements and thinking about observation. So I'm going to say it's a fact, not an opinion, and it shouldn't have an explanation. So maybe I'll write measurement too and abbreviate that, MEAS. After I underline, last thing I'm going to do is draw a picture. If this is a fact, I'm going to draw my brain again, but then cross it out because we don't use thinking when we make an observation. In fact, a better picture might be to draw your eyes because we know it's something we can see. After you've got your P, T, U, and P, you are ready to actually answer your question. The rock is red and in color and crumbles. Well, we could see that, we could touch that. That looks like a good guess. The rock was formed under high pressure. That's not our answer because that's an inference. We don't know that for sure. This rock was most likely, inference. This type of rock will melt. If you're predicting something, that's also an inference or a guess. The only fact we have is that it's red and it crumbles when you touch it. Okay, make sure you guys set up your computers for today, and remember, an observation is a for sure fact or a measurement. An inference is a guess based on what you just saw. Good luck.